Hello game fans and welcome to another interview at Game Anglia. Now today I'm speaking to Lynne Lui, and she is a artist, entrepreneur, and she has gone from founding new companies all the way to working for big companies like King. So thank you very much for coming today. Thank you very much for doing a talk today, and yeah, thank you very much for sitting in this very hot room as well. So really, to start me off, I just wanted to talk a little bit about your career to date. So as I mentioned there, you've done everything from starting new startups to working for King, one of the biggest Candy Crush companies in the world. So can you tell me a little bit about where your sort of artistic journey has come from leaving university?
Yeah, so leaving university, so I guess I was quite lucky because when I ended university, my kind of portfolio was sort of selected for one of the 10 in our course to be showcased at this thing called Creative Skill Set. I don't know if you've heard of that. But it's like a kind of networking event, and we basically were able to show our show reels and things, like many of us. And there I'd met quite a few, I guess, industry professionals and things. Initially I considered working at an animation company called Blue Zoo. Like from that Creative Skill Set thing, I got a modelling internship with them. But then I got a kind of, also from the Creative Skill Sets, one of the people had looked at my portfolio and kind of decided to sort of take me on to the next stages of the process and things at a different company, and then they offered me a full-time role there as a 3D artist, because at university I actually mainly focused on 3D. I pretty much didn't do 2D at all at university. I only had a really vague background in 2D just from you know, doing it at school and things, but since then and university I basically only really did 3D. So anyway, yeah, and then I worked at this company for a bit. It was called Gamesys, and essentially they did games, but like they also did, I suppose, like some things that I wasn't as into, like gambling games and things like that. Okay. So I worked with them for a while, and it was actually a great way to kind of, I guess, get started in the industry, to meet people and things, because I guess it was a great first job in terms of I suppose like a good wage to help you kind of sustain yourself in London and all of that stuff, and also to learn more things about 3D while I was there. So I actually learned, I guess, sort of how to originally I always used Maya at uni, and then there I learned Max and things, so that was really useful. And then also while I worked there, I saw a lot of people on the teams were doing like a lot of 2D work, and I don't know, for some reason after a while that got me maybe feeling kind of inspired to do 2D again, because I think the reason I never did 2D at university was because most lecturers and things would tell you things like, oh, 2D is dead, like there's no point in ever doing 2D again and things. So I think that's why I didn't pursue it and focus fully on 3D, but then I saw a lot of people doing this Illustrator stuff. And then I came across King, and basically I actually had this kind of contact from King. It was like a friend who actually, he had actually come into Gamesys to do an interview, and then didn't end up working at Gamesys and ended up working at King instead. So I talked to him a little bit, and then while I was at Gamesys, I actually helped a different friend of mine get into King by like kind of recommending her to this person, because because at King they get like recruitment bounties, so if it's a good person it's like in the interest to help recruit, and then she ended up getting the role. So so yeah, basically through that I knew a couple of people at King at that point, and then I just I sent the guy my portfolio and said, okay, what do you think? And he said things like that he felt like it had good potential, but maybe there wasn't enough 2D in it yet. So at that point, because it was mainly focused on 3D, and I did have some 2D, but it was quite limited. So what I then did was I just like kind of worked really, I suppose, hard in my own time, just really late nights after work, you know, sometimes to like 3 AM for like months at a time and things, or well, maybe not too long, but like just kind of crunched during a period to try and get together a solid 2D portfolio, like as in the 2D side to add to the 3D.
Yeah.
And then I put it together and sent it back to him, and I guess he seemed kind of impressed, so he then forwarded it on, and then I got contacted to interview and things. And King have a very thorough interview process. I'm not sure if you're aware of, but they do like a million interviews. So they first do a phone interview, then they do just to kind of get to you. Then they send you the art test, which usually is about like a week's worth of work.
Okay.
And then after the art test, if you kind of get past the art test, they then invite you for like another kind of 6 interviews. And then like, yeah, you basically find out if you got the role after the 6 interviews.
Wow, it's pretty thorough.
Yeah, and that includes, you know, interviewing the art director that was in like Stockholm, which was kind of like the head art director as well. So yeah, that was kind of the process, and we they even said, like after I joined, they even said, I think Ricardo, the CEO, said in some of the you know, those kind of monthly sort of like talks that he did, I think he even mentioned something like it was like the percentage comparison had been kind of like almost harder to get in than like Harvard, like as the way they did it now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was quite a intense, and I suppose you could probably describe a stressful process, because it was stretched out really long. Like it would have kind of been okay if it was like under a week and just everything happened, but it was like a lot of waiting and not being sure. And I actually had friends that went to that process before, got all the way up to the 6th interview, and like they still were rejected.
Oh.
So it's quite a strenuous process. But yeah, I was very lucky to kind of, I guess, be offered the role as a game artist there. And then yeah, it was really great when, you know, I joined King, learnt a lot of stuff. I mainly joined the team for the game Shuffle Cats. I was actually the first artist on the team for Shuffle Cats, and that was quite a big learning experience, lots of different things. And then for a little bit of time I also took a break and went on to Farm Heroes for a while. And then with King, essentially towards the end of the period that I had with King, basically I got contacted by the CEO of my last startup company that was called Truly Social, and then she offered me a kind of lead artist role at the startup. And I guess there was a number of reasons, but the main reason I decided to leave was because I guess personally my personality has always been a bit more suited for like, I guess like a lead / managerial role, because I just like kind of getting involved in a bit of everything, and I also just like making sure that things are managed kind of efficiently, and also making sure as well, like nowadays, like I care a lot about like trying to maintain a good culture where teams and things are genuinely happy, because I've seen a lot of that kind of promises and a lot of that not really happening or not really continuing. So it's something I feel quite strongly about, because I believe that if teams are able to work at their best, it's when they feel like they're having the most kind of genuine fun and like happiness, you know, day to day. So in order for me to kind of make that level of impact, it usually requires to be joining at a kind of like a founding level, or, you know, like some kind of lead role, because yeah, that's just where it's easiest to be able to kind of shape that sort of thing. And then yeah, like even when I was at King and at Truly Social, I was always involved in things like the I guess the social side of things. So I would always try to do things like arrange team events and stuff, or like something interesting. Like I think just before I left King, it was actually a tough decision, because I just set up a Krav Maga class at King, and I was like, oh, I just set that up, like, but now I'm leaving, so like I don't get to even experience it. And then when I was at Truly Social, we did a whole bunch of different team events, like from things like board games, at our places to like some cocktail making sessions and like all sorts of things. And yeah, it was just really fun and like really I actually personally like it the most when it's more of that family feel, like in a startup, so where you can kind of you know, feel like you're very close to your colleagues and they're all like good friends and things that you can talk about most things with. So that's kind of like the environment I enjoy working in the most.
Help shape its future.
And then after that I like worked on Lost Words with Mark, and I worked on there as like a kind of freelance art director, and I kind of helped to do, like, I guess I tried to keep a sort of overview of everything. So like, because my personality is sort of, it's always got a bit of that kind of like art manageriness to it, where I like to make sure everything is efficient. So I tried to kind of keep an eye on like the art things to make sure that everything that I was doing was, you know, always delivered. And then as well as like the other artists as well, I tried to kind of keep a sort of tab on it, so that like, you know, we would be aiming towards, like, we would be able to hit the milestones and stuff. And then while I was working there, I then got contacted by the CEO of my current company, Pixie and Games, and they just found me on LinkedIn, and I guess I actually write a lot of this stuff on my LinkedIn. Like, I kind of write what I'm interested in as what I'm interested in getting involved in a company, like things like you know, building the culture, like nurturing the potential in people, you know, trying to bring out the best in people and trying to create a very fun team dynamic and team culture that is maintained throughout. And surprisingly, he actually read that, because a lot of people don't seem to read those things. But yeah, he read it, and then he said like that it was kind of refreshing to see, because I guess maybe not everyone focuses so much on this element of it. Like, I personally care a lot about the people, and a lot of people care more about the product or more about just like they have to be skilled or something. And to me sometimes that feels a bit like robotic. Like, I feel like we're kind of humans after all, so I kind of care more about that element. And so yeah, he contacted me, and then we got talking, and it felt like we had a lot of the quite similar ideas of like how to kind of shape a new company and stuff. And I think that was what I was very excited by, because it was quite rare for me to meet other people kind of like myself that were as focused on people. And especially for like the head of a company, I find it's very important to have that, because that then makes it easier for me to kind of be able to be involved in that aspect and try to help people on sometimes even more of like a personal side as well as like professional side, because I find that all of that stuff feeds in. You know, if somebody's having like a really terrible time in their personal life, they're probably not going to be at their best when delivering professionally and things. So yeah, so that's pretty much where I am at now. So yeah,
it sounds really fascinating. And there's a lot of companies that you go into, and people expect there to be somebody driving the culture and somebody to be driving all the events and the get-togethers and stuff. But it's never that person. You know, you need somebody in there to be pushing things forward. And it sounds like, you know, you're the ideal person for that kind of role. But so also to go back into the game art as well, where do you start, and how do you begin your creative process, and then how do you then feed that into your team as well?
So it can be very different per project, because I've had a very different starts at like I think almost all of the projects I've been on. Let me have a think. So basically it depends on like the kind of timelines of the project, I suppose. With the project at King, the timeline was very, very relaxed, so it was just a lot of like concepting for quite a long time until, you know, Star was decided. But at somewhere like Truly Social, my first startup, it was kind of like, what happened with that was they had already made an initial version of the game, but it was like the art was very interesting looking, I would say. It was very outdated, and there was some stuff in it that slightly terrified me. So basically, it yeah, on that project I kind of almost had to sort of sell the fact that I wanted to redefine the style, because I was just like, this is not like going to be a style that is going to work. And I talked to them about that in the interview process and said, you know, is this okay and stuff, but they were like, okay, it's fine, but I think they didn't want to change it too much. So because of that, like they were hoping they could still reuse some of the assets, but because I had to do a sort of sell of like redesigning the whole thing, I had to work very, very quickly, and I pretty much had the space of like a few days to just be like, okay, let's just pick the style right now and just make something appealing, and then just give it to them and be like, let's just change it to this. So that was very fast paced, and that was pretty much just like go for some interesting, I don't know, I guess like I tried to think of like, you know, what people generally see as appealing. So for example, you know, stuff like Pixar and Disney is very big, and that generally is appealing to wider audiences, because, you know, everyone watches that you know, films and stuff like that, so they're quite used to that kind of style. So what I sort of did with that art style was I took some influence from there, but then I also combined it with, I guess, my own personal art style, and kind of generated a style there.
Maybe you're right.
Yeah, and then yeah, they seemed quite happy with it, and the investors and things like LVP and like Drusilla from Supercell, which was one of our investors as well, they just seemed to like the style, and then so we just rolled with it, I guess. So that was like in the space of a few days, just having to do that. So that's very rapid.
Okay.
And then in terms of I guess like the actual process that I might go with a bit more if I had a bit more time is probably just to spend, like, it's still kind of dependent on like the project and the limitations of like timeline and the goals of like quality and things, but I guess I would spend, you know, I suppose more time like doing research and things like that, and like collecting lots and lots of references to get inspired. And I've actually recently discovered some interesting things to do with creativity as well that I've been trying out, and so I guess like nowadays I would just try to look at that reference and things and try to first write down or sketch out like as many different ideas and things as possible to sort of show like a broad range, and then I might go from there and start kind of like figuring out which ones are actually the best, and narrowing down from there. But yeah, it seems like whenever I join any kind of startup things though, it's often just like there's not much time to decide on a style, so it's just like, let's just do this one. So I kind of have just got to be like, kind of take into account what they want as a brief and things, and what our target audience is, you know, roll that all together and come up with a few ideas and just be like, do you like this? And it's like, they're like, you know, if they're cool with it, then it's just like, okay, let's just roll with this.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that's pretty much.
Okay, and so that kind of rolls into my next question, where short time frames. So what are some of the biggest challenges to sort of upcoming game artists? What are the challenges will they face?
I actually personally don't mind the short time frame too much. Like, it's quite nice because I prefer being very busy compared to very not busy, because there's a weird level of stress that you can feel if you're not doing anything. Like, yeah, there's been some situations where there hasn't been enough tasks, and it's kind of like, well, now what do you do? So, and that's something that, yeah, I actually don't like as much as if I was just really busy with too much to do. So, in terms of challenges, I guess it depends on the artist, but I would say maybe it's like things like I guess like, yeah, okay, thinking about it in terms of like holistically what I've experienced and seen other artists experience, this one of the major challenges that I've seen over and over again, and this is one of the things I did want to maybe talk about just to help people realize this early on, because the earlier you can realize this, the more you can get out of your career as a whole. Because this is a major thing that even the majority of the people in the industry that I've worked with, or like or friends and things, they don't realize is people basically, like, as they stay in the industry for longer, there are a lot of artists that have a tendency to get like extremely jaded, and that can be one of the biggest challenges, because if you end up being really jaded and really cynical and really like, oh, I don't want to go to work, like something that you used to love as like a passion is like, why has it become this? And it's kind of like, often like when people face this challenge, like they get to such a low point that like sometimes they're like, oh, I don't even know if I want to be an artist anymore. Like they question, you know, whether they even like the industry or like doing art anymore. So I think this is actually a major challenge that people face, and it's something that's brought on by, like, if they experience, say, either a toxic environment, or if they experience something really bad that's happened, like if, you know, a game that they love gets like canned, or if like you know, something they really enjoy all of a sudden changes for the worst. They then can feel like, I don't know, I guess like kind of crippled by it. And what people don't realize is that like they don't have to be crippled by it. It's actually a choice. It's kind of like, yeah, it's kind of a crap situation. Like nobody really wants, you know, the game they love to get canned and things, but it's actually how you look at it that like shapes what it kind of does to you. So you can kind of get dragged in and then feel jaded and feel, oh, everything is terrible now, like I don't even know if I like my job and things, and a lot of people go through that. Yeah. Or you can realize that, okay, this has happened, but instead of viewing it as like a crippling failure or a crippling kind of like terrible thing that has like ruined everything, you can view it as like, okay, well, this has happened, and it's probably not going to be great for a little while because like I really cared about that, and you know, I let that pass. But then you can be like, well, that's a great learning experience, you know, like the fact that it was canned, obviously there were reasons that it happened, so there's a lot that I can learn from that, and then I can just take that learning into the next thing I'm doing. And sometimes, you know, the fact that something has happened can lead to even greater things happening later. Sure. And it's that, and also combined with the fact that you can kind of learn to enjoy any job in some ways. And a lot of people don't realise this. Like, I have seen artists that have managed to do this and do it very well, and so day to day they kind of bounce into work and they're like, yes, this is great, because they even manage to enjoy the most tedious of tasks. And if they can do that, then they can do anything. Because what I've seen over and over happen to a lot of my friends is like they will just or not necessarily friends but colleagues and things, well, they might just, you know, do a what people would clarify as a boring task, which fair enough, it is kind of boring, but then they will just think, oh, this is so boring, like this is terrible, like I'm doing this week on week, and then it drags them down and down and down. And it kind of like, I know it kind of often feels like natural for that to happen, but it doesn't have to. Like, they could just look at that task. Like, for example, that's why for me, like, I don't actually mind doing a lot of the tedious tasks that other artists would be like, oh, this is the most boring thing. Like, for example, positioning UI or something. I know it has to be done, and it's not something that everyone would jump at doing. But it's... yeah, like I just see it as like, okay, well, this is just something to be checked off the list. Like, once it's done, and it's quite quick. So you can actually find enjoyment out of even these most boring tasks. And the more that people can do that, the more they can get out of their careers, because that's probably the biggest challenge I've seen.
Oh, that's good. That's useful advice as well. And you mentioned earlier things like LinkedIn. So what other channels do you use to not only get yourself discovered, but also to find work? And so I guess for me, the way I kind of ended up finding work a lot of the time was just through networking. So I tend to try to go to a lot of networking events and things. Started out with the creative skill set one, then I just been to lots of different ones here and there. I can't remember the exact names, but I often just, you know, keep a
keep a sort of like open eye to meet new different people, and just like make friends with people. Like I think I met some people from Space Ape initially, just through like a game jam that we did with Space Ape, and then we got on really well with them, and then that somehow led to like my partner getting a graphic design role with them, because then like they were kind of recommended internally. So it's just you know, the more kind of contacts you can have in an industry, especially people who might be in recruiting positions, not necessarily recruiters, but like say lead artists, or you know, art directors, or just other like people getting in, who interview other people, then you can get a better chance of getting your portfolio seen and all of that stuff. So I would definitely recommend going to lots of networking events and things, and LinkedIn is actually getting better and better at that kind of thing. Okay. Like I've been contacted quite a few times on LinkedIn now, so yeah, just having a profile that reflects what you're like as a person on LinkedIn. I think the most important thing is to be genuine, just to be, you know, what you're like when you're kind of like the best version of yourself and most comfortable, and just sort of share that on LinkedIn.
Okay. And so as an artist and entrepreneur, you're putting yourself out there, you're putting portfolios out there, you're putting yourself out there in terms of putting all your LinkedIn stuff. So how do you deal with client feedback and criticism of your work? Or, obviously you've mentioned how some artists can become jaded because, I mean, obviously just when you've created something that you're happy with, to have somebody else go, well, can you make the head bigger, or can you...
So that's a very important part of being an artist, because I think it's extremely rare for you ever to go into any art job without any feedback or criticism, no matter what role you're at, because artists at any level can always continue learning and continue improving. So to never need feedback is like kind of a bizarre thing. So it's definitely a very important learning to, as early as you can, to be able to learn to appreciate feedback, like kind of see feedback differently. Like I know a lot of artists, and even I used to do this, you know, when I was younger, like feeling like it was a bit of a personal thing, and it was quite uncomfortable, you know, being criticised so directly. And sometimes it was a bit of an issue with like the way people were criticising as well. Like it's not very helpful if someone just says like, oh, your work's not really looking good. It's like you need something to work with, you know, something, a direction to go in. So it's like it's just kind of like seeing feedback as like just a normal part of the process, and kind of expecting it, and just being like, okay, that's cool. Like now they've come up with a, you know, another interesting idea, that's something I can try out now, and kind of practicing that kind of way of thinking about feedback over and over until it becomes the normal way to think about feedback. The more you can do that, the more I guess you can get out of feedback, like, because then you can really improve from feedback, and the less you will experience things of like feeling jaded and stuff, because it's often because it's often not really a personal thing. It's just like a team effort. So it's like you know, everyone wants the best for the game as a team and stuff, and still, you know, obviously there are some times where it's still a bit uncomfortable and things, but still you've got to kind of find your own ways of figuring out how to kind of just like let that go, or just like get through that, and then just sort of shake that off and just be like, okay, that's cool, well, what can we do to make this better? Because yeah, at the end of the day, if you do take on the feedback and you do learn from it and act on it, it's usually ends up being like a better thing, and then you get better and better as an artist. So
okay, excellent.
Yeah.
And so obviously we're talking a lot about a new game developer is just coming into the industry. They're looking for 3D artists, 2D artists. And what would be the best way for an indie developer to approach someone like yourself or to other game artists in the industry?
I think mainly through things like LinkedIn. Sometimes Twitter is quite popular now as well. I use that a bit less myself, because LinkedIn is a bit easier with the sort of professional connecting thing. So yeah, to contact, if you mean just to contact directly, yeah, I would say probably LinkedIn, or if you were to find people's ArtStation directly and things, you can send them an email.
What would they send? So say, okay, I've got an idea for a game. At the moment, it's just a lot of sketches, and I want to get an artist involved. Do I come to you with a budget first? Do I come to you with all my sketches, a brief? What's the best way to start a relationship with an artist?
I think it can depend, but like I think, as long as you have some kind of solid idea there, I think, because personally I'm quite flexible, so I'm interested in even hearing about, you know, even if an idea is not necessarily that fully formed, as long as it's an interesting one. But more important to me than anything actually is more the reliability of the person. So for example, you know, they seem like a honest, genuine person that would, like, I guess, like,
See it through,
you know, yes, like see it through, and you know, want to think of everyone's best interests. You know, they would definitely, like, for example, pay the artist and not try to, you know, try to get like extra things for free, or you know, that kind of thing. Just like someone that seems good to work with is kind of core. And then from there, yeah, if they seem like they have an exciting idea and things, I think, yeah, if it's a project that kind of connects with the artist, like for example, for me personally, I quite like things that I suppose have a lot of characters, or like animals or monsters, you know, those kind of things. Like those things are quite exciting for me. So yeah, if I hear anything like that, that kind of gets me quite excited to get involved in that kind of thing. Whereas maybe if they were to ask me about a game about football, like I would be less into that. So. So yeah, I think it's that, like, just kind of whoever is approaching, you know, like they want to be kind of like honest and kind of
committed as
well. Committed, and just wanting to be a good team member, you know, like kind of the way they approach, you know, it'd be like maybe think about how they might want to be approached and kind of put that in, yeah, exactly, think of that and keep that in mind.
Okay, so I mean, you're obviously working on this new startup at the moment, and so I'm assuming that you're looking to grow and to take people on. So say there is somebody watching this video or somebody at Game Anglia looking to impress you. How would somebody come into an interview with yourself, and what kind of qualities do you look for?
So for me, the major thing is like personality, because I believe personally that, like, okay, portfolio and stuff, although it is important and you do need a degree of skill, it's like, even if it's a little bit below the bar, I'm fine with that, because that can be cultivated in-house, and like, as long as like we help to give the right feedback and stuff, you know, that can be grown. So personality is really key, and when I say personality, what I mean is like someone who is absolutely energetic about working in a team, and I mean that as, like, you know, I guess they have that sense of energy and passion, but also that they understand how to do teamwork. Like, that's essential. So what I mean is, like, you know, a degree of understanding other people, like understanding how to interact with other people. If you were to boil that down to like simple terms, it's actually just knowing how to genuinely be nice to other people. Like, you'd be surprised at how like not everyone in the industry necessarily knows this as like a key point, but it's so crucial. And even companies like Google, like they did, I think they did research on like tests and things to do with what makes the best teams, and I think they did quite a few different tests, and it just kept boiling down to the fact that the teams were nice to each other, and that was it. So but yeah, this is really more key than people realize, because, you know, when you're making a game and stuff, there are times where it is very stressful, there are times where it's crunch and things, and if you're with the team members that are, you know, not compassionate and maybe you're just gonna like start shouting at each other or something, that's not gonna lead anywhere. That's not gonna be the answer. That's gonna do is just create more stress. So you need people, you know, balances of personalities, but also people that know that at the end of their, you know, the fundamental desire is that they want to help the team, they want to help other people, and they feel a sense of, they feel a genuine sense of I guess what's the word, like kind of like they feel like it's rewarding if the team does well and not just themselves. Like, I guess there are some people that come in like maybe feel a bit egotistical and they're like, okay, I have to do better than everyone else, and that's not really, definitely not what I'm looking for at all, because that's not really like a team kind of feel, and it's often kind of detrimental to like the team dynamic and stuff. And saying that at the same time, it's also like, you know, the whole thing of like complaining and stuff as well. Like, although I get that, yeah, it's a day to day, yeah, sometimes people will complain a bit and that's fine, but if people get sucked into the spiral of like complaining over and over, and this is something that I've experienced myself and I had to kind of like pull myself out of it, because it's like, it doesn't, it's like the opposite of productivity. It just really drags, sucks the energy out, and it doesn't result in any solutions. So now I'm like very into just like solution focused approaches, and because I'm interested in solution focused, that's why I look for similar type of people. So a lot of the people that I've been very impressed by, like there have been a few people on my previous team that really impressed me. Like one guy was just, you know, and actually he's working with us now because of that, and he just, you know, in some ways, like there was a joke where we had where he kind of like emits a calm energy, and like it's kind of true, he actually does, like, and that's really nice because he has that calm energy that helps to keep everyone else sort of more calm in times of stress and things. And it's really important for that, because there are things that, if it's happening like constantly, and things like stuff trying to make you stress, so it's important to have that to balance it out. And then also, you know, he was kind of the type of person that was able to find fun in every single task I ever gave him. Like literally there was no task that I gave him that he said, oh, this is so boring. Like he never did that, and I was just so impressed by that, because I was like, wow, you know, if you can do that, then you can do anything. And like, obviously I would still try and give him the tasks that are engaging for him, and always ask him, you know, what is interesting. But sometimes there are tasks that nobody probably wants to do. But, you know, he managed to find the fun in that. And it's that type of person for me that is key. And then portfolio is kind of secondary to that. So that's personally what I'd look for any team member, artist, game designer, programmer, etc. like that kind of thing.
Well, you've got you're working with a good team at the moment with Lost Words. So you've got Rihanna Pratchett, Tomb Raider fame, writing the words. You've got ex Lionhead, Mark Backler, and yourself working on the project. So what's that been like to work on so far?
Yeah, it's been really cool. It's a different experience, because I think that was my first time working solely remotely, like myself as well. I'd done some kind of remote outsourcing before, where we were in-house and then remotely spoke to and fed back to outsourcers. But this was the first time it was completely remote, like pretty much everyone. So that's been really interesting, and like interesting to experience the different way kind of an indie game deals with things, because I guess there's lots of limitations, like, you know, budget and all that stuff. So we want to get the best quality while doing it as quickly as possible, and so there is like a lot of work and things to do, but it's a similar thing, I guess. Like we just because I just always keep in mind the whole thing about like trying to make sure that the culture and the general vibe of the team is like a positive one. So I always try to, you know, I guess like as a sort of like manager or someone that gives feedback, I always try to keep in mind to give some positive feedback to people as well, like for the majority of the things that they do, because it is just incredibly important for that, because people do need to feel a sense of, you know, what they do is valued, and, you know, get encouraged in that kind of way. So I guess I try to do that kind of thing, and try to, like, even though we're working remotely, you know, I try to get to know the other team members, have a chat with them and things, try to see if the things that they're working on, you know, they're happy with, and like, you know, that sort of thing. And then like if there's anything that they want differently, then I try to kind of speak to Mark to sort of slightly accommodate that and things like that. And yeah, there's been some, you know, great people to work with on the team. Yeah, like Mark himself is, you know, he like does a lot of like inspiring things. Like you can tell he really wants to kind of push the quality and things of the game, and it's just like what's come out with the game so far, you know, it's really awesome to see.
Yeah,
like it feels, yeah,
everywhere.
Yeah, and then like just even seeing the vertical slice, it's very rewarding just to see it all kind of come together, how everyone's worked really hard on it, and it's great team effort, I think. So yeah, like I found that like quite a different experience in the sense of that like I was working as a kind of freelance art director on it, but I would say almost my role was a bit more like artist slash art manager on it, because that's kind of what my personality gravitates towards. On the title, I did kind of help to define the style for the diary part of the game and things. But yeah, actually kind of by being on the project, it made me realise actually more that I'm more interested in the art management side than the art direction side. Sure. So yeah, it was really interesting.
And one question that I've been asking everyone today as well is, so imagine the scene, so you're just about to receive your first at university, you've done your training, you're just about to go into the industry, and then all of a sudden you appear out of nowhere, you as you are now, and then you can just now give yourself just some sage advice before you're about to go out into the big wide world. What would you say to yourself back then to get you started in the industry and to
I would probably say to myself to not bother applying for a master's, because there was one point where I actually before I got offered the job, because I was really unsure what was going to happen, because when you're just fresh out of uni, it's kind of like you don't really know, like it's kind of like you just got to get lucky in some ways, and so I was like, okay, maybe I could do a master's near London. I was going to do one in Kingston, and I was like, okay, maybe I could just do that master's and then go from there, but I actually ended up applying for the masters, getting into the masters, arranging like to move flat and everything to do the masters, and then getting offered the job, and then being like, oh, now I'm living in Kingston, like so because I actually moved to a flat that was 5 minutes from the uni, but ended up being a long commute to get to work in London. So that would be one of the major things. And then I think the second major thing would probably be along the lines of practice your 2D earlier on, because that was something I didn't do because I didn't think it was a thing in the industry. Like, it is true that 2D animation is a little bit tricky to get into in the industry, but 2D illustration, because of like the mobile industry kind of blowing up, that is still quite a thing. And I guess you can also do concept art and things.
I think that will always, people who said, oh, 2D's dead, you know, just set you off on a whole different path.
Exactly. So I think I would have practiced 2D a lot more at uni, and that would have helped me maybe look at opportunities and things like at King earlier on. And also maybe the third thing is also to consider like keep an eye out for more studios, like startups and things, because actually, like, I remember I actually got, I don't know if it's I got contacted or I just got like some kind of like job alerts to do with King recruiting a year ago, like before I actually applied. But originally their branding was like really kind of strange, and they looked like a sort of strange gambling company or something. Like it was like called King.com, and it was like green text and stuff, and it kind of put me off because like because I just like for some reason like the branding didn't make me trust the company that much. But I think looking back, I would have been like, maybe it's like worth considering, even though they might not have the sort of perfect branding in place yet. Because what I've come across now is like, you know, there are a lot of startups, like all the startups that I kind of were involved with, you know, their branding wasn't great, and I actually ended up like coming in and helping them change that. So on Fourth State, I actually helped with, I guess, like the direction for the logo and stuff, and then same with Truly Social, we helped to redo the logo. And then now Pixie on Games as well, I just redid that all again. So sometimes like you can actually come in and sort of change that stuff yourself. And I guess just like kind of what I maybe have been talking about already today, like just things of like making sure to be flexible, making sure to really do well of working in a team and things. And the tricky thing was, like, even at university, my personality was kind of sort of suited for a little bit of that kind of manager role, because even at uni we did a team project. It was like kind of 5 to 10 of us, and I was sort of like the producer on the team, so I managed the entire schedule. Like at university, at our uni anyway, our animation course, in the third year you just create a film by yourselves, and the teachers are just like, there you go, that's it. Like, we're just going to give you a deadline of May or June or something, and that's it. They don't really get involved except for like the occasional feedback sessions, but they don't get involved at all with scheduling. So that's why actually it can be a crazy nightmare of scheduling for some people's teams and things. So even at the university stage, like, because I was quite suited for that, so I was the producer on the team, and I kind of structured and scheduled everything. And actually we ended up finishing, like, so there's 2 deadlines, I think it was the May one and then the June one, and very rarely do people finish by the May one. Most people finish by the June one and are doing all-nighters and like pulling their hair out and things. Yeah. That's kind of how it's structured in the uni a lot of times. But because I'm just so focused on like efficiency and things, like I guess I managed to sort of help the team structure in a way that's like we actually finished in May, and we were able to kind of just relax for that last month and kind of refine things and things like that. Yeah, towards the end, actually, some of the teams were like, "Oh, we wish we were on your you were on, on our team to help us, like, you know, plan it better and things," because they were doing all-nighters and like drinking so much coffee. But yeah, like it's just tricky, because it's really tricky to go, because I really loved that. I really loved that role, because it was a mix of art and then kind of management as well. But it's like near impossible to kind of go from, I suppose, your university course straight into a role like that, because it's management. So the tricky thing is most people don't trust, I suppose, like people who just graduated enough to give them that level of responsibility or to even try it out. And so it can be tricky, especially if you're not doing a sole producer role and you're just doing more of a hybrid like art and manager thing. But now I realise that like actually this kind of role is much more likely to occur in things like startups and things, because it's more necessary, because people wear more hats and things at a time. So I would have maybe said to myself to consider looking at startups earlier on, but at the same time I do think my experience at King was valuable as well, because there was a lot of good learning experiences, you know, learning about like Agile and Scrum and things for the first time. Sure. And just getting familiar with game development, meeting lots of, you know, cool game developers and like different people, and getting a sense of what it is like to have company culture in such a huge company as well. So yeah, I do value, like, even though I would say all of these things, like, I think my different experiences that I've been through have kind of led me to what I am now. So I do value each of the experiences that I've had, like, up till now, like, sure, regardless. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much. That has been a truly fascinating talk. Thank you very much for taking the time to take me through it all. Yeah. And so, yes, if this video has been useful, please like, subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back with another interview very soon.